Every great story has a beginning, and so does this one. But the story that begins is not about nuts and bolts of creation, is not about billions of years and how things are put together. The beginning of the story is about relationships. It's about God creating man and woman to live in a relationship with Him, to worship Him, and what happens when they rebel against Him.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing existed. Nothing. And then God spoke. And by the authority, the power of His word, creation came into existence. Birds and land, water, air, sun, light, darkness, it all came into existence because of the will of God and the spoken word of God. At the very end, after God had created light and dark, land and water, plants and animals, God created man, human beings. And God placed them in a special relationship. God asked Adam to go throughout all of creation and to name all of the creatures there. God created a helper for Adam, a woman, and the two of them were to live in perfect relationship with God, their Father. It was perfect. But it didn't stay that way. See, the crafty serpent came, the deceiver, and convinced Adam and Eve that if they would just go against God, if they would just chart their own course, if they would go with their own wisdom, their own logic, their own desires, they could make things better. If they would just go with what made sense to them over what God told them made sense, how God had described the world to work. And so man and woman rebelled. They ate the fruit that God told them not to. They rebelled. They chose to rule themselves. They chose to go their own way, and their perfect relationship with God was broken. In fact, not just theirs, but they, as representatives of all of creation has now been tainted by rebellion. We would call that sin, this desire to self-rule, to stand apart from our Creator who breathed everything into existence with the authority of His word. And now all of creation is broken. All of creation is stained. All of creation is messed up because of human rebellion against God. As we begin our biblical narrative, it is imperative that we begin by recognizing that in the beginning, everything was good. And our rebellion, man's rebellion, humankind's rebellion against God, this desire for self-governance, this desire for self-importance has messed it all up. Because see, that's the whole story of the Scriptures. This ongoing theme of rebellion. This ongoing theme of our desire to stand apart from God, to determine for ourselves what is right or what is wrong, to go our own way. The whole of human history has been marked by that rebellion. And yet, it's also marked by God's ongoing faithfulness. See, even after Adam and Eve rebelled against God, God was still good to them. He didn't wipe the slate clean. He didn't destroy them. He didn't start over. In fact, God protected Adam and Eve. God removed them from the garden for their own well-being. God gave them children and a lineage. God gave them a promise. God told them that one day the seed of man would crush the head of the serpent would crush the rebellion. And so even in the midst of this rebellion, even in the midst of despair, God proved faithful. God proved that he is good and his mercy endures forever. God gave a promise. Over the coming weeks, we will evaluate that promise and explore it, and hopefully grow to trust it, because God is trustworthy. He is true, and his promise endures forever.
As you pull out your questions today, we want to make sure that you leave ample room and time for you and your family to consider what it looks like that you rebel against God every day and that you're also called to worship. We know that you can skim over those answers very quickly, but we'd ask that you take the next week to really ponder and consider what it means that you are a rebellious person and that God also then calls you to worship him every day. As always, we're here every week to answer any questions you might have, and we're faithfully praying for your families. Have a great time.